Year-end tax planning for my small media business. This year is almost over. It's late December. I've been procrastinating on wrapping up my tax planning for the year. This is certainly for everyone, including myself, a unique year. Went on unemployment for the first time in my life back in, was it March or April? I think it was April 1st. Took advantage of the federal stimulus, received the PPP loan, ended up not using it and sent it back. Unemployment at the time was a better deal. I've since chatted with a few other people in business and they received the PPP loan later, like in June, July, or August, and they were able to take advantage of that CARES Act $600 a week benefit until it ended and then use their PPP funds. A few other people were able to get the SBA loan and utilize some of that capital to keep their businesses going and cover bills. For us, it just worked out that unemployment worked. My wife stayed on until she had depleted the full amount, I think it was $10,000 from the state of California, and that's from like 15, 20 years of paying into the UI fund. I worked intermittently, so I actually cycled on and off of unemployment in California. In August, we sold our California home and relocated to Texas. I'm in our Texas home right now. We actually purchased this home 5 years ago and had a tenant here. And it wasn't a positive cash flowing investment, but the rent covered all the expenses and they paid down the mortgage for the first 5 years. And it also allowed me to purchase in 2015 pricing versus 2020. This place has appreciated a bit since then, which is wonderful. And part of my strategy here is, this is one of the best school districts in the city, and that was strategic when we bought it. It's also why some of the highest property taxes in the city because of the schools, and that high property tax value is actually the drag on what makes this a not a positive cash flowing property as a rental. But I think today we've got about $60,000 or $70,000 of appreciation in this home. And if I live here for 2 years out of a 5-year window and sell it, because I've occupied it as my primary residence for 2 of the 5 years, when I sell it, we won't have to pay any capital gains tax on the appreciation. So up to $500,000 for a married couple filing jointly. So that's part of the strategy. We'll stay here, get my son through high school. Prefer to keep him here for high school anyway, because like I said, the school is excellent. We've had a very positive experience so far in late 2020, switching school districts from California to here in Texas. Much better funding, schools are better. I think my son, for the first time in his life, he's in a permanent structure as a classroom, versus California, it was all the temporary trailers. Temporary, but permanent use. So I'm sitting here in my kitchen. I've got the old refrigerator behind me, installed the new refrigerator yesterday. The dishwasher was broken when we moved in. Installed that yesterday, ran it for the first time. And at some point after we fell asleep last night, the freshwater supply line started leaking. So my wife came out here at 3 in the morning to a flood. So when I'm done with this video, I gotta pull that dishwasher, put a new hose in, troubleshoot. So this is a great form of procrastination right now. I decided to take December off. Multiple factors there. I like to wind down at the end of the year anyway, each year, if I've had a good year, which was not the case this year. But the COVID compliance requirements for the last several productions I worked on have gotten to the point where, one, the crew headcounts have been reduced, day rates are getting squeezed because of COVID compliance costs is kind of the explanation from the customer side. I get it, it's justifiable, but it now means I'm filling more roles, which I'm happy to do. But for example, one of the last calls I had in December that ended up not happening was, and this is for a major media company. I've worked for them many times in the past in California. They pay market rates, good to work for. It's sort of a journalistic, news-oriented content, so they generally pay freelancers on portal to portal. So when I leave my place of business, my road time is part of the workday, and it's a 10-hour portal to portal rate. So we're usually on site. They're typically celebrity-related content. So you only get 15 minutes, maybe an hour with the talent. So we'll spend 3 or 4 hours setting up. You were in roll mode for about an hour, and then maybe an hour to load out. So on site, it's like 4 to 6 hours plus the commute time. So they're great little days. And usually the package for this particular show is it's 2-camera interview format with 2 subjects. They typically sit side by side, so we're just a wide lock off and a floating close up. But generally it's 2 cam ops, a sound person, and maybe someone to do lighting, but not always. Often the 2 camera operators have to set up all the lighting, sound, and then hair and makeup is usually 1, sometimes 2 dedicated for each. Well, this one, because of the COVID squeeze, 1 on budget, but 2, they wanted to limit headcount. They wanted me to do the whole thing solo. I would run sound, manage the 2 cameras, set up the lighting. I was comfortable with all of that. 2 subjects, I'd put 2 wireless labs on. Actually, I'm sorry, and no wireless labs because of COVID. So 2 booms on a stands, they're in fixed chairs. 1 camera's a lock, the other I float between the close-ups. No problem on all that. I'll give myself a little extra time to set up. Well, then they came back and said, okay, and in addition to doing all of those roles, oh, and there was a PA. They had budgeted a PA rate for someone to help me move stuff around and set up. So 2 of us, and then they wanted me to subcontract and provide an EMT, a medic, that would make sure we enforced all this COVID stuff, and they wanted some kind of certification document from that actual EMT with a med kit that they've also been trained up on COVID stuff. And I'm like, well, what are the requirements? They want us to wear masks. Like, I've got masks on the truck, that's no problem. And temp checks and log the people's temperatures, sign some paperwork from the end client. I'm like, I can handle all of that. We don't have to pay for a medic. Well, at any rate, they wanted the medic. I found a booking agency through a referral, got the medic covered. Then they came back and said, well, and we need proof of workers' comp insurance from my company, my Winters Media Group, that covers the PA that I've hired as an independent contractor, and the medic that's contracted through another business. The way they weren't even set up to allow me to put them on my workers' comp. And in addition to all of this, during my relocation, I have not established payroll in the state of Texas or workers' comp here. Just been in transition mode, and I've been traveling back to California for, I don't want to say maybe 50% of the work I've done has been in California. So I just made the decision, like, when I restart payroll, I'm going to finish out the year in California. I'll just pay the California taxes. The bulk of the income from the business has been from California anyway. So anyway, I didn't have Texas workers' comp, and that was like a showstopper. I didn't get the job. Oh, and the final thing that I was not happy with, it was about a 2-hour drive, 2 days, and instead of 10-hour portal to portal, they wanted to do 12 on site plus a 1-hour lunch. So 13 on site, 2 hours there, 2 hours home. I'm now doing what would normally be handled by 3 different people, and I got to be responsible for this medic that's responsible for me. It was just like, it was too nutty. And that company's based in New York City. So then they were clearly applying the New York City requirements to being out in the countryside here in Texas, suburbia, not the countryside anyway. Okay, so I have not been working in production for December. However, I have been working every day for myself as a trade person, swinging a hammer. I'm making rent ready, basically a full remodel on the rental property that I own with my dad. It's been vacant since June 1st. I actually did a video back then when I drove out from California to start demoing the place to get it ready. Since then, it's been like a day a week of attention up until December 1st, because I would say, okay, I'm going to dedicate this week to the house, and then I would pick up a production job, and that basically blew up the motivation to work on the rental. So I said, all right, well, year end, for multiple reasons, it's going to be slow. I've decided not to work, so I'm just going to try to work every day, including weekends, making forward progress on this house. And I've been successful at that up until yesterday because of the appliance problems here at home. This ended up burning the whole day yesterday, and then I put in this morning doing some work down there at the house. But the strategy there is a lot of the work that needs to be done there, spending on materials, I'm doing as much labor as I can myself, is necessary repairs. Like we had foundation, pier and beam structural fail points. There were broken windows, plumbing issues. All of those are considered repairs versus capital improvements, which means they're expenses that are deductible same tax year against passive income. So I'm accelerating all of the repairs I can in this tax year to lower my taxable passive income. So there's this tax incentive here in the US for what's known as passive losses offsetting passive income. So as I understand it, that would mean, let's say you have 2 rental properties. Let's say one of them, the repairs exceeded the total rent received for the year, so you've got negative losses. You can carry those losses against other passive income. So another rental property, or I think this may be possible for me, certainly do your own research, but I left a bunch of equipment in California. I parked it with another company, and they're using it on consignment, and basically I think that can now be considered passive income for me because I'm doing no active managing on it. I'm not putting any time or labor into it. Really, the extent of it is I get a report about once a month of the billing I need to generate back to them. They send me the jobs and the codes. I generate invoices and I'm getting a check. It's a wonderful arrangement. Grateful for that. And I think from a tax perspective, I can take my passive losses, the repairs, for example, on this rental that are exceeding the gross rents received this year, and offset some of my passive equipment rental income back in California, I think. Not totally sure, but I'm navigating that in the coming months. For healthcare for 2021, we completed during the open enrollment period, the ACA healthcare, which is basically federally subsidized healthcare here in the States. You have to have income below a certain threshold to qualify. I think I have enough expenses this year because the business, basically my business overhead mostly remained the same in 2020, even though we had a dramatic reduction in annual revenue. You know, I still had to pay my business insurance every month, still had all the overhead and upkeep on equipment, vehicle insurance, repairs on my work truck. It appears that our modified adjusted gross income for married filing jointly with one dependent will be able to be just under the cutoff for the subsidy. And the plan there's like a big cliff. If you go $1 over the max income for a subsidy, I think in our case it works out to like $6,000 or $8,000 of additional cost in insurance. So earning an extra dollar could effectively cost me another $8,000. So it's critically important that if we're going to take advantage of the ACA, we got to make sure we keep it in that subsidy range for the modified adjusted gross income. So on the retirement savings side, for many years we've funded 2 401k accounts. They're self-managed 401ks through the S Corp that we own, one for my wife, one for myself. We tried historically always to max out the employee side contribution, and then in addition to that, if the company had profit at year end, we could do an employer side profit sharing contribution. It's a very generous scenario. I think in 2019 it worked out to you could contribute up to, for a married couple, tax deferred, approximately $150,000 if you qualify and have the income to justify it. We've certainly never hit those ceilings, but it's quite a bit higher than if you've got a traditional job where you can only put in whatever the limit is this year, you know, roughly $19,000 or $20,000. So those 401k accounts, I closed those last year and rolled over the funds into rollover IRAs for my wife and myself. Felt like I had too large of a chunk of our family's net worth tied up in these deferred retirement accounts, and I wanted to have more capital available and diversified a bit. So my focus the next couple years is the real estate side, real estate investing, you know, like to focus on those income producing rental properties to balance out what I've got tied up in the stock market. And that comes into a bigger picture, you know, considering the potential to retire early. There's a provision. You know, traditionally you can't touch those retirement accounts until you're age 59 and a half. If you pull out money early, it's a 10% penalty. So you got to pay income tax on what you pull out plus an additional 10%. There was a provision this year in the CARES Act where you could pull money out penalty free. You still got to pay tax on it. Fortunately didn't have to tap any of those funds. But in the coming years, I'm considering there's this tax code provision called the 72T, which allows you to pull out a very conservative fixed amount annually without penalty until you hit 59 and a half, or it's 5 years or age 59 and a half, whichever's longer. Works out right now, I'm early 40s, we'll call it mid 40s. I've been doing the projections based on mid 40s, but it works out to right now, it's pretty low. It's like 3, maybe 3.5% of the account value you can withdraw every year, but you're locked in. It's a fixed amount. You got to pull it every year until you hit 59 and a half. Just a fun thing to play with. I'm looking at it like, if I got a little bit of passive income from rental real estate, if I can have a little passive income from my equipment rentals, and I can continue to work in media, but in a part-time basis, and then I also draw 3% of my retirement investments. That's 4 sources of income, 3 of which are passive or lightly managed. And then, I feel like going from working 60 to 80 hours a week for the last 20 years to being able to only work, say, maybe 10 or 15 hours a week in production, it's very attractive to me at this point. It's so much more enjoyable when you're not grinding it out 5, 6, 7 days a week on sets. For future years, there is a tax incentive that I'm becoming educated on now that I think I could qualify for in the future, and that's the classification of a real estate professional. And I'm going to read to you and paraphrase a bit here what the definition is here in the US. The real estate professional classification allows taxpayers to deduct 100% of all of their real estate losses against ordinary income. To qualify as a professional for tax purposes, a taxpayer or their spouse must meet a 2-part test. 1, they must spend the majority of their time in real property businesses, and 2, taxpayer must spend 750 hours or more in real property businesses and rentals in which he or she materially participates. So 750 hours, quick math, 52 weeks in a year, works out to just under 15 hours a week. I think in the future, it's very possible for me to continue to work in production a day or two and spend a day or two dealing with real estate with a growing portfolio. Leases, managing repairs, conducting some of those repairs. I think certainly in the month of December this year, I've put in more than 40 hours a week dealing with this property. Now I need to clarify with my CPA whether or not, I think if I'm doing the labor, the trades, that qualifies as some of that time. It doesn't have to just be desk time, management time. If I'm down there ripping out a floor and putting in a new one, I gotta verify, but I think it meets the qualification. So for the past 20 years, December's been the year when I've considered what big equipment purchases I need to make so that I can have the expense in the current tax year to reduce my taxable income this year, but it's really equipment I'm going to use in the coming years. And this year, I'll tell you what the gear is I'm considering, but this is the first time in my career in media that I'm not going to buy any of this stuff. I'm going to wait. But I'm ready to buy a second FX9, and the FX6 was announced. And I will say, historically, each time I've bought the mid-range, the next model down, like the half price option from a manufacturer, I've regretted it. It's burned me. So my previous video was on the Canon C300 Mark I and what a great return on investment those cameras were for my business. Before I bought those, I bought the C100 and immediately regretted it. I liked it. It was a great tool. I was happy with the images, love shooting on SD cards, but my the momentum from clients, it's like they typically, if it's a broadcast client and the mid and higher range corporate, they want the top end model from a manufacturer. So I would get the call, hey Dave, can you shoot interviews, C300? Yes, available. Yes, I can shoot interviews, but I have the C100. Same sensor, same picture, looks great. It's just a little bit different codec. And you like lose them. No, it's gonna be a C300. Like they don't even want to hear why the less costly camera can do the job, and even if I would do it for a lesser rate, it's like, no, they want the best kit because that's what they shot in New York and they shot in San Francisco, and now they want me to shoot on it. in my market, we're all contributing to the same show or project. So just stick to the best, buy the best, and you can always use the best for the lower tier projects, but it's very difficult to use the lower tier equipment when someone's asking for the higher end kit. I did the same thing in the red paradigm. I bought the Scarlett because I had enough turnkey production work where customers weren't specifying gear. You know, I was doing the concept delivery, so I just needed to make pretty images, and that's really why I invested in that. But word would spread that there's this DP, he's got a red package, hire him. I'd get the call, and then in the end they wanted the Epic, they wanted the high-end model, and it didn't matter that the Scarlett met all the technical requirements, like we're shooting 23:9:8, the appropriate sensor area for 4K UHD in Super 35. It's the same files and the same codec, the same raw workflow, same, interchangeable. It didn't matter. I didn't have the Epic. It wasn't even, I wouldn't even get to the cost negotiation stage. It was just, I didn't have the thing they wanted, which was the top end model, so I wasn't gonna get the job. And on those mid-range cameras like the C100 and the Sony had I actually own one of those too, the Sony FS100, which was the predecessor to the FS700. The 100 as well as the C100, they lacked SDI output and they lacked timecode in and out. So on multicam shoots, and this was before that whole like auto syncing from the audio track thing was readily available. So really multicam shoots for efficiency, the only way you're going to sync cameras is if they could all be timecode locked together. And then on-set monitoring when you've got clients, directors, a team of people that need to see the picture. It's like you got to have a BNC cable, HDMI. I've been plagued by problems with it. Like you could get picture up and then the cable would get bumped, it would flicker, the connector gets broken. I spent a fortune purchasing and replacing 50-foot HDMI cables because the connectors were continuously getting damaged. I get a couple shoots out of a 50-footer, it would get busted. No matter how careful we were about it, they'd get broken. Now the FX6, it doesn't have that limitation. It's got SDI out, it's got timecode in, it's a similar sensor, I believe. Now I haven't fully researched it, but I feel like the things that were a problem for me on multicam shoots with the lesser models are not going to be an issue with that FX6. So I already have one FX9. Ironically, it's got more hours from vlogging than actual client work we're shooting on today. But I mean, I could buy two, this is always the dilemma, right? Like I could buy two FX6s for the price of an FX9 package, pretty much. So do I just pick up an FX6? I don't know, they're not shipping yet. I could certainly work with my local reseller to prepay in December for a 6 or an FX9, even though I'm not going to receive it until early next year. But I got the money. I could certainly take advantage of the expense to reduce my income this year, but right now I don't know what's going to happen first quarter, second quarter of next year, and I think I'd rather just pay more tax and have some extra reserve capital in the bank to weather the upcoming months. So I need it, but I'm gonna wait. So next up, I need another tripod. I left a complete Amira package with 2 PL zooms, a bunch of batteries, chargers, lighting, grip equipment, an audio package back in California so that I can jump on an airplane anytime, go back to California, my gear's ready to go, with an AC that's got more experience and years than I do, and takes better care of the kit than I do, ready to go. I'm a quick Southwest flight away from being able to work a commercial back in California with all of my own kit. Because I left that stuff there, I'm actually short a quality tripod here in Texas. I've got a Sachtler 15 SB, which is my workhorse. It's what I use on most shoots. I'm using it right now. I use that on my Amira with the 17-120. I think most people consider it a little undersized for that package, but it counterbalances in about the halfway position on the counterbalance, like number 6 or number 7. It's good. The action's not as buttery smooth as a bigger head like an 18 or a 20. My Sachtler 20 is in California. I had a beautiful O'Connor 2060 for many years. I sold it in 2019. I missed that thing, but I used one 2575 end of last month up in Arlington, Texas at the stadium with an Alexa Classic and my 30-300 all dressed out, Micro Four zoom. Shot, I was in a fixed position in the arena, 135-300 mil with a 2x doubler. So it was effectively a 600 millimeter. And being on a 600, holding like a waist up shot of an athlete, you need that big, super smooth head. But it's so nice. Every time I go back to those big O'Connor heads, you kind of forget just how superior they are until you use it again. So anyway, I used to own one. I miss it, but I'm glad I sold it. I used it to pay down the mortgage on this house. Another item I may or may not buy. At this point, I don't think I'm gonna do it till next year, but I wanna put heat in my camera van. I was looking at the diesel off-brand from China, forced air heaters on eBay. They're basically clones of the Webasto or Espar heaters. I think both of those companies had patents on this process that have since expired, and that's now why on Amazon and eBay there's just like all these brands of what was a $1,500 device you can now buy for like 150 bucks. But I'm a little wary putting in this like off-brand China import diesel heater in a van where I'm going to be sleeping. And my van is gas powered, not diesel, so I'd have to work out a secondary tank. They come with a tank, but I don't really want a fuel tank inside the vehicle. I'd rather have it undermounted outside, just pure safety reasons. And then second, refilling, like if I have a diesel tank in the van, I'm gonna spill when I refill, and then I'm dealing with stinky diesel, and diesel takes a lot longer to evaporate than gas. Gas is more dangerous. Webasto makes a gas heater. I think it's gonna be about $1,200 to $1,500 for the kit from Webasto, but the Promaster van has an auxiliary fuel tap on the fuel tank, and the Webasto kit comes with the connections. I'm confident I can DIY install that setup, put a carbon monoxide detector over my bed, and I'd have heat. And the other thing was I was going to do the foam spray insulation and insulate the roof, the walls, and possibly the floor. But now that I've spent some nights in the van, in the cold, in the desert, and in the heat, I don't think it's going to be worth it for me for how little I'm sleeping in the vehicle, and I don't spend daytime in it. It's purely an overnight when I'm in transit, you know, out in the middle of nowhere, random truck stops, and in the desert. And I don't think it's going to be worth it. I'll just burn extra fuel on those nights when I need heat versus insulating. So those are the three items I may buy before year's end. FX9 or 6, Sachtler 18 SB used. I like the SB generation, and you can save a bit of money over the current model. The Plus, which was the predecessor, less so because you have a limited counterbalance range on the Plus generation. So you, like with an SB, you can run a little DSLR up to like a fully dressed Arri package on say a 15, 18, or 20 Sachtler. But the Plus, the counterbalance doesn't go low enough for smaller cameras. So Sachtler 18 SB, aluminum or carbon fiber sticks, don't care. Ground spreader. Talked about my tax stuff. This video went on much longer than I anticipated. But let me know your thoughts and comments. What are you doing 2020, such a unique year? What are your tax plans, equipment plans, retirement, tax deferral? You doing any other passive income investing? Love to continue the discussion in the comments below. Thanks for watching.